Guys, it's Kana back again with another recap and review of It. Welcome to Derry. And today I'm going to be talking about episode 2 and breaking down some of my favorite moments of the episode as we dive in deeper into this Stephen King universe. But if you haven't done so already, please check out the episode 1 breakdown. And if you've already watched it and you liked it, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you can get notifications on all of my Welcome to Derry recap and reviews. But without further ado, let's talk about episode 2, The Thing in the Dark. Now, one of the things that I usually do with streaming is I will skip the recaps. One of the things I loved about episode 2 is that the recap led right into and segued right into the episode where we got the recap of what happened to the children at the theater. And of course, we mean by that the attacking of Susie, Phil, and Theo by the entity known as It. And it bleeds right into Lily's nightmare. And that's where we start the episode. And I really loved that effect. Lily awakens from her nightmare, and then we get a new element to the show, which is a theme song we didn't have in the first episode, and it's called A Smile and a Ribbon. It was sung by Patience and Prudence. It came out in 1956. They were a sister duo that did bubblegum pop songs, and I love when you have these kind of almost Jordan Peele. We give the credit to Jordan Peele, who did it with I've Got 5 on It with Us, and ever since then people have been using these kind of uncanny and unsettling upbeat remixes to songs and like horror movie effects. Well, this one is just outright upbeat as the original song by Patience and Prudence, and yet juxtaposed to the horrors of Derry, it's both fitting and unnerving, right? So we get this beautiful illustrated sequence where we get this kind of idyllic aesthetic propaganda of what life would have been like in Derry in the 1950s, where everything is picturesque. You've got families on a picnic, and then you've got scenes, iconic scenes from the little episodes that are built into the lore and the history in the novel that are now a part of this series. So you see things like the ironworks explosion that happened at Easter. You see some children playing in the river, and a child being lured towards the sewer by the outstretched hand of Pennywise offering it a lollipop. You see a little girl peering into the sewer drain, much like Billy's brother Georgie did in It, right? And we see Pennywise swinging from the side of a building, involved in like a gang massacre that happened. All of these little moments in Derry's lore that are juxtaposed to these two little girls talking about how all they need is a smile and a ribbon in their hair and their day will be great. Like this idea of you can just pretend. And that is at the core of what Derry is. It's this place where the adults can't really see the unsettling violence at the heart of their small town. And so it's like they just pretend that it's not there. They witness horrific things happening and they just chalk it up to it's normal or nothing's wrong. And we saw that, of course, in the mini-series. We see that depicted in the movies, and we're going to see it in this episode. So the episode begins with some cops, Clint Bowers, stalking the home of Hank Grogan, who they believe is responsible for Susie, Theo, and Phil's death. They, of course, witnessed the blood and the carnage remnants from their attack in episode 1, but there are no bodies because it devoured the bodies, and they can't explain what happened, but they know that Lily was somehow involved, and they also know that Ronnie was involved, and so they think that Hank is the one who did it, because of course you're going to blame the black guy, right? Then we find Leroy Hanlon awaiting the arrival of his wife and son, and they're not the only black family in Derry, which I kind of thought that was going to be the case in episode 1. They're just possibly the most affluent black family that's in Derry, where there's definitely a distinction between like the black side of town and the white side of town, and they have purchased a home in the white side of town. Meet Charlotte, played by Taylor Page. I absolutely adore Taylor Page. She's so beautiful, and in this role she fits so well. And then the young man playing Will, who is going to eventually grow up to be Mike's father. And already out the gate, they're illustrating this character as being like such a precursor to Mike. He is obsessed with science. He loves learning. He's very soft and tender and sympathetic. And those are all of the qualities that we see in the character of Mike when we meet him 28 or so years from now. We head back to the school where we see those collection of little mean girls that Marge was trying to fit in with, bullying one of their friends. And Marge is doing like these little voice effects, and it's really giving Richie. And I suspect that when we meet this other character, Rich, that Marge and Rich are going to be a couple, because Rich already has a major crush on Marge. She gives me like the voiceover and the jokes effects. And then Richie, I'm almost certain that these are going to be Richie's parents. And I love how they're building perhaps the backstory of the Losers Gang and how they got to Derry and why they were uniquely predestined to fight it and destroy it. And when Will arrives at school, the bullying immediately starts. Like, there's just, guys, it's the 1960s. Racism is, well, it's 2025 and racism is still rampant, but it's definitely rampant. And there is this distinction that I think people need to make between the evil caused by Pennywise and the evil that just exists within Derry because it is systemic to America, right? And the racism is definitely something that is systemic to America. Much like the homophobia, if you saw It Chapter 2 that we witnessed, and really even It Chapter 1, because a lot of the slurs and the taunts that Henry Bowers hurdles at the Losers Gang have to do with, them being gay. And we see that in It Chapter 2. And racism is one of the evils that makes Derry a feeding ground for it. And that's important. There's a distinction. So there are things that it definitely causes, but it drives off of fear, and it can tap into evil people and make them do things, or people who are sensitive to the supernatural, but they're not one and the same. And I just was seeing some of that argument online, and I was like, okay, no, we have to definitely talk about that there is a distinction between the two. But Will gets to the school, he's getting teased, he's getting picked on, and this kind of initiates him meeting Rich, who definitely I feel like they're going to be fast friends. We get to Charlotte kind of exploring the town and that daggone Paul Bunyan statue. And she gets her first taste of Derry when she witnesses some of the older boys bullying and beating up a younger boy. She tries to stop it. She runs after them. And of course, the rest of the town is looking at her kind of like, why are you involved? We adults don't get involved in the antics of children, but also they're blind to a lot of the negativity that happens. They're very passive to it. They just kind of run away and they hide from it. I feel like the miniseries, the 1990 miniseries, does a better job of illustrating just how significant that was. There's a scene where Bev is being accosted by Henry Bowers, and they're like kind of touching on her and, about to attempt to assault her. And this old lady who lived across the street from her, she sees it. She could call out to them and tell them to stop, or at least distract them. And she just kind of clutches her purse, her clothing closer, and goes back into the house. And she doesn't want to do anything to stop them. We see that happening a lot in Derry, and Charlotte gets her first taste of it. And then so we come back to the Hanlon house where they're kind of debriefing about their day. Now, while all of this has been going on, Leroy Hanlon has been dealing with the aftermath of his attack on base, and he's not quite sure that he's getting all of the information, but we're starting to unpack a little bit more about what they are trying to do in Derry, which is obviously unearth something, and they're using Dick Hanlon's shining to do it. But back at home at the Hanlon household, while they're debriefing about their day, I have to call out one of my least favorite movie and filmmaking tropes, which is families sitting down to eat a meal, and for whatever reason, there's a kid who doesn't end up finishing their food. They're excused from the dinner table without having touched their food. And this happens in this episode. And so I just had to kind of show you guys that this happened, because I'm always talking about this trope. It's one of my least favorite tropes. I feel like one of the reasons why they're doing it is because it's staged food, and so they don't want to actually have to eat the food. So it allows them to kind of like just push the food around. Somebody gets upset, they leave the table, and then we can kind of cut the scene, and now we've shown them eating. Because it's hard to film eating. You're chewing food, you're talking, it's a whole thing, but I still hate the trope when it happens. Now we have big moment number one, in my opinion, of the episode, which is Ronnie. Back at Ronnie's house, her father and grandmother are arguing yet again about the fact that he's been accused of this crime. They suspect him. They're watching the house. What are they going to do? You know, she's lied for him. She's given him an alibi, or not really lied for him, but given him an alibi. And he, you know, it's just kind of like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, everything will be okay. And of course, she is much more realistic about their states in the world. They're Black, they're in Derry, it's not going to be okay. And Ronnie is at the center of this, and she's torn, and she ends up going to bed and getting visited by the entity, by it. And it comes in the form of her deceased mother. It just knows how to go for the jugular. This is probably going to be hands down one of my favorite It transformations, because it loves to come in the form of dead people, but when it can come in the form of a dead person who has an attachment to the character that it's haunting, it's even better. And to do this is so sad, but it's also gratifying from someone who loves horror, because it's like the perfect attack. It's playing on her fears. Her mother died in childbirth. It's playing on her fears of that. And at one point, she's literally she's birthed out of her mother's womb, and then still attached to the umbilical cord. It's grotesque. It's haunting. It's horrifying. I absolutely love this scene. Then we go back to Dick Halloran, who's hanging out with some army buddies at a white bar. I definitely think that this is going to be a connection to him being involved in creating the black spot, because we know that we're going to get the black spot, and we need to get it soon, because it's got to be destroyed sometime soon. And this is when we find out that the military is looking for something that will help them in the war. Back at school, Ronnie and Will end up in detention. This happens because Ronnie goes to confront Lily about everything that's going on, and to tell her that it has visited her again. She's pleading to Lily to go and say something, to confess. Lily doesn't think that anyone's going to believe her, and Ronnie ends up cussing her out in the cafeteria, which leads to her getting detention. Will ends up getting caught in the crosshairs of someone throwing a stink bomb, and they think that he did it because, of course, yet again, as a parallel kind of mirror image to what's going on with Grogan, blame the black kid, and they end up in detention together. This felt like a kind of a nod to the Breakfast Club, by the way, but there's this beautifully cute moment where Ronnie is talking about how he smells, and he kind of talks about the chemicals in a smoke bomb or a stink bomb, and how it's the same as the clouds on Jupiter and Venus. And so maybe he smells disgusting, but maybe he's covered in stardust. Oh, this little boy is so adorable. I definitely think Ronnie is going to become Mike's mom, and they're going to be together, which is tragic when you know how they end. But I will enjoy it and enjoy the cuteness and adorableness of their budding friendship and then future relationship as we get the next 4 episodes of the series before it ends. Can we please go back to 10, 12, 15 episodes, please? And thank you. While they're in detention, the police have shown up to the school and they have gotten Lily Brambridge and they are interrogating her. And remember that Ronnie has accosted her essentially and asked her to defend her father. Well, we know it's Clint Bowers, which if you remember Clint Bowers, he's definitely going to be related to Henry Bowers. Probably his grandfather, but alas, not 100% certain. And so we end up with like an evening sequence where Ronnie sneaks out. She goes to Lily's house and she ends up, telling Lily that she has to confess, going off on her mom. Really good moment of her standing up for herself. But Lily is sent to the grocery store by her mom, where she ends up getting attacked by it. So attack number 2 by it. It is a parents' night tonight. And this time Lily is attacked by seeing the faces of the dead children on the cereal boxes, but also by her father. If you recall, her father died in the pickle plant, and she goes into an aisle and all of the aisles end up turning into mazes and she gets boxed in, and then the pickle, her father ends up being in pieces in the pickle jars, and then the jars break and kind of merge to create this like collective sludge creature form of her father who attack her until she kind of awakens from the delusion, and the rest of the patrons of the grocery store are staring at her. And so it is a back to Juniper Hills for our girl Lily. I don't know if we will get a Henry Bowers-esque sighting. I mean, obviously he's not alive yet, but if we're gonna find out that like his connection to Juniper Hill is generational, if it's going to be something passed down, if we're going to end up with another Bowers there. But Lily definitely has spent some considerable time there. Makes me wonder if somehow or another Lily is going to end up being Henry's mom, but I hope for Lily's sake that she ends up out of all of this, even though she's dirty for doing my girl Ronnie wrong. She needs to tell what she knows, but at the end of the day, it is Derry and no one would believe her. So I'm torn, because it's like the reality of Derry is no one would believe her if she did say what really happened. On the other hand, don't let the black man take the fall for you, little girl, okay? Let's not do that. And she is well aware of what's the repercussions of her actions. Back at the base, we know that they're using Dick Halloran to suss out something that's connected to the entity, and we get where Leroy Hamlin is kind of made privy to all of that because he's so smart and he's been tested. And so the general shows up and it's like, oh, well, we've been testing you, you passed the test, and now we're going to kind of clue you in on what's going on. We find out that they are aware of it, that they know that it is a entity that preys on people's fears, and if they can somehow use that, they can weaponize it to help them in the war, which is what they're looking for. They're looking for the source of that energy, and they've made a discovery, and what we end up getting is like a old decayed Ford with like dead skeletons inside of it. And I believe that this is going to be connected to the like 1938 major attack, because we know every like 28 years or so it awakens to feed, and there ends up being some major event that happens. This is an older car, so 1938 or maybe 1908, somewhere around there. I think I always get the years wrong, but that is kind of how the episode ends. And it's a lot of moving parts in play, but I think that we've got definitely connections to our main losers, where we have Mike's dad. We know Will is going to be Mike's dad, we know we've got a connection to Stan's family that we met in the first episode. I believe that Marge and Rich are going to become Richie's parents, so that would give us Richie. I think Ronnie is going to become Mike's mom. We have, of course, Dick Halloran, who is connected inside of the the universe, and I'm glad that we're getting like a second round of him, because Stanley Kubrick did take him out in his version of The Shining, but he is a pivotal character in the Stephen King universe, so I'm glad that he is here. And I think we're just getting so much good lore. I really enjoyed this episode. Like I said, that sequence to me, number one part of the episode, best part of the episode, the sequence of Ronnie being attacked by it in the form of her mother. That is a memorable moment that is going to stand out for me in all of the Stephen King universe's monster attacks. Pennywise attacks. This is like up there top 5. But let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you thought of this episode. Did you like it? Did you love it? And I'm going to be back because I know I am behind with episode 3 in a couple of days. Let me know any particular parts that you would like me to talk about, and I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, toodles.